Assalamu alaikum, dear listeners. Today I will share with you the inspiring story of Tufail bin Amr, the chief of the tribe of Daws from Yemen. He was a man of wisdom, intelligence, and poetry, and his tribe enjoyed leadership in the region of Yemen. In the 11th year of prophethood, when he arrived in Mecca, the people of Mecca welcomed him with great respect and honor. They approached him saying, "O Tufail, you have come to our city, and there is a man among us who has put us in great difficulty. He has divided our community and scattered our unity. His words are like magic, creating separation between a man and his father, between a man and his brother, and between a man and his wife. We fear that the same trouble that has befallen us might reach you and your people. Therefore, do not listen to him and do not speak to him." Tufail bin Amr says that they kept advising him in this way until he firmly decided not to listen to any of the words of the Prophet, peace be upon him, nor to speak to him. When he went to Masjid al-Haram the next morning, he had placed cotton in his ears so that none of the Prophet's words would reach him. But it was God's will that he still heard some of the Prophet's words. He listened and realized how beautiful they were. Then he said to himself, "Woe to me! I am a poet and a man of understanding. I can recognize good and bad. Why should I not listen to him? If his words are good, I will accept them, and if they are bad, I will reject them." With this thought, he stopped, and when the Prophet returned home, he followed him. He entered the house and told the Prophet about his arrival, the warnings of the people, and how he had blocked his ears but still heard some words. Then he requested the Prophet to present his message. The Prophet invited him to Islam and recited the Quran to him. By God, Tufail bin Amr had never heard words more beautiful and just than those. He immediately accepted Islam and testified to the truth. He then said to the Prophet that his people respected him greatly and listened to his words. He would return to them and invite them to Islam, but he asked the Prophet to pray that God grant him a sign. The Prophet prayed for him. The sign he received was that as he neared his people, a light appeared on his face like a lamp. He prayed to God, saying, "O God, not on my face, but somewhere else, for I fear people may think it is disfigurement." So the light shifted to his staff. He first invited his father and wife to Islam, and both accepted. But his tribe refused to listen. He returned to the Prophet and asked him to pray against his people. Instead, the Prophet prayed, "O God, guide the tribe of Daws." The prayer was answered, and eventually the entire tribe embraced Islam. During the Battle of Taif, the whole tribe of Daws was present, including Abu Hurairah, who was destined to become the leader of the scholars of Hadith. Tufail bin Amr remained in Medina until the passing of the Prophet. In the year 11 after Hijrah, he fought against Salmah the liar in the Battle of Yamama, where he was martyred. The Messenger of God used to visit the Arab tribes to preach Islam, and every year during the fairs of Mina, Ukaz, and Majana, he would invite the tribes to Islam. When the season of Hajj came, caravans would arrive and settle in the valley of Mina. Since the people of Mecca had taken upon themselves the task of denying the Messenger of God and preventing people from the path of God, the Prophet's strategy was that he would go to the tribes at night so that no idolater of Mecca could create obstacles. Following this strategy, one night the Prophet went out accompanied by Abu Bakr and Ali. They reached the valley of Akbar, 3 miles from Mecca. Passing by the camps of Banu Dul and Banu Shayban bin Techalaba, he spoke to them about Islam. Their response was hopeful, but they did not make a firm decision to accept Islam. After this, as the Prophet passed through the valley of Mina, he heard some people conversing. He approached them directly. They were 6 young men from Yathrib, all belonging to the tribe of Khazraj. It was the good fortune of the people of Yathrib that they used to hear from their Jewish allies in Medina that a prophet was about to be sent in that very time. The Jews used to say, "When he appears, we will follow him and, with his support, we will destroy you like the people of Ad and Iram." The Prophet asked them, "Who are you?" They replied that they were from Yathrib and belonged to the tribe of Khazraj. He then asked, "Are you allies of the Jews?" They said yes. The Prophet said, Will you sit and listen to some of my words? They sat down, and he invited them to Islam and recited to them the words of the Quran. They looked at one another and said, "This is the very prophet about whom the Jews used to speak. Let us not allow them to accept him before us." They all accepted Islam together. Their names were Abu Umama Azad bin Zurara from the clan of Banu Malik bin Najjar of Khazraj, Aw bin Harith bin Rifa'ah known as bin Afra from Banu Najjar, Rafi bin Malik bin Ajlan of Banu Zurayq, Qutbah bin Amir bin Hadida from Banu Salama, Uqbah bin Amir bin Nabi from Banu Kazim bin Kab, and Jabir bin Abdullah Rubab from Banu Ubaid bin Adi. These men were considered among the wise of Yathrib. They realized that the recent war between Aws and Khazraj had crushed their society, and they did not want such wars to continue. They hoped that the Prophet's message would become a means to end the conflict. They said, "We have left our people in such a state that no other nation has the enmity and hostility that they have. We hope that through your message, God will bring them unity. The present situation is not yet suitable for you to come. We will return to Yathrib, spread the news of your prophethood, invite the people to your call, and present to them the religion of Islam. Next year we will come again to meet you." After this, they returned to Yathrib, and through them the message of Islam began to spread from house to house. The call and preaching of the Prophet was still passing through the stage between success and severe persecution, and just as faint stars had begun to appear on the distant horizon, the event of Isra and Mi'raj took place. Regarding when this journey occurred, the scholars of Seerah have different opinions, but from the context of Surah al-Isra it appears that this incident belongs to the very last period of Mecca. The details known from the Quran and authentic hadith are that one night the Prophet was resting when two angels, Jibril and Mikael, came. They awakened him and took him to the sacred house between Safa and Marwa, where the Burak was standing. It was a heavenly creature, larger than a donkey but smaller than a mule, white in color, with wings on its thighs and a saddle upon it. This heavenly animal was called Jarud. Jibril and Mikael placed the Prophet upon the Burak, and they set out with him, surrounded by groups of angels. Along the way, they passed through groves of date palms. Jibril said, "This is your place of migration." The Prophet dismounted and offered 2 units of prayer there. Then Jibril stopped the Burak at Mount Sinai, where the Prophet prayed 2 units. His third stop was Bethlehem, where Jibril informed him that this was the birthplace of Jesus, son of Mary. There also he prayed. From there, they proceeded to Jerusalem, where the Prophet dismounted at Masjid al-Aqsa. A large gathering of angels was present to welcome him. Inside Masjid al-Aqsa, all the prophets were waiting. There the Prophet led them all in prayer, with Jibril also among the worshippers. This was the first stage of the journey, called Isra. After that began the second stage, which is the true Mi'raj. From there, Jibril brought the Prophet to the rock from which the angels ascend towards the heavens. A ladder appeared, and through it he was taken from Jerusalem to the lowest heaven. The gate was opened, and the Prophet saw Adam, the father of mankind. He greeted him, and Adam replied to the greeting, welcomed him, and acknowledged his prophethood. God showed the Prophet the souls of the blessed on Adam's right, and the souls of the wretched on his left. Then he was taken to the second heaven, where he met John son of Zechariah and Jesus son of Mary. He greeted them, and they replied, gave him congratulations, and acknowledged his prophethood. On the third heaven, he met Joseph, greeted him, and received the same response and acknowledgement. On the fourth heaven, he met Idris, greeted him, and Idris welcomed him and affirmed his prophethood. On the fifth heaven, he met Aaron son of Imran, greeted him, and he responded, congratulated him, and affirmed his prophethood. On the sixth heaven, he met Moses son of Imran. The Prophet greeted him, and he replied, welcomed him, and affirmed his prophethood. But as the Prophet moved forward, Moses began to weep. When asked why he was crying, he said, I weep because a young man sent after me will have followers who will enter paradise in numbers far greater than those of my own people. Then the Prophet was taken to the seventh heaven, where he met Abraham. The Prophet greeted him, and Abraham replied, congratulated him, and affirmed his prophethood. After this, the Prophet was shown the Bayt al-Ma'mur, the house of worship of the angels, located exactly above the Kaaba on earth. At that time 70,000 angels were circumambulating it. Then he was taken to Seerat-ul-Mustafa, a lote tree. Its leaves were like the ears of elephants and its fruits like large jars. Angels were covering its leaves like shining lights, and upon it were golden moths, radiance, and colors. Seerat-ul-Mustafa is the boundary between the created world and God. Beyond it lies the unseen realm known only to God. Nearby is paradise, which is mentioned in Surah Al-Najm. From there, the Prophet entered paradise. Jibreel stopped at Seerat-ul-Mustafa and said, "If I move even the length of a hair beyond this point, I will be consumed by fire. Now this is between you and your Lord." After this, the Prophet was taken to the presence of the Almighty God, the Most Glorious, and he came so near to God that the distance was like 2 bows' length or even less. At that time, God revealed to his servant what he revealed and made 50 prayers obligatory. After this, the Prophet returned, and when he passed by Moses, Moses asked, "What has God commanded you?" The Prophet replied, 50 prayers. Moses said, "Your community will not have the strength to perform that. Return to your Lord and ask for a reduction for your people." The Prophet looked toward Jibreel as if seeking his advice, and Jibreel indicated yes, if he wished. Then Jibreel took the Prophet back to the presence of God, and God reduced 5 prayers. When he came down and passed by Moses again, he informed him. Moses said once more, "Go back to your Lord and ask for a reduction." Thus the Prophet continued to go back and forth between God and Moses until only 5 prayers remained. Even then Moses advised him to return and ask for more reduction. But the Prophet said, "Now I feel shy before my Lord. I am satisfied and I submit." It has been mentioned that scholars differed regarding whether the Prophet saw his Lord. Some scholars explained that there is no proof that he saw him with his eyes, and none of the companions held this belief. From Ibn Abbas 2 sayings are reported, one that he saw him, and the other that he saw him with his heart. These 2 statements are not contradictory. The Prophet saw Jibreel in his original form near Seerat-ul-Mustafa. He had seen Jibreel in his true form twice, once on earth and once at Seerat-ul-Mustafa. God knows best. In some narrations, it is mentioned that during this journey, the event of the splitting of the chest also occurred again, and many other things were shown to the Prophet. Milk and wine were presented to him, and he chose milk. It was said to him, "You have been guided to the path of natural disposition, or you have chosen the way of nature. If you had chosen wine, your community would have gone astray." In paradise, he saw 4 rivers, 2 outward and 2 hidden. The outward ones were the Nile and the Euphrates, and the hidden ones were rivers of paradise. The meaning of seeing the Nile and the Euphrates may be that his prophethood would spread to the fertile valleys of those rivers. God knows best. The Prophet also saw Malik, the guardian of hell. He never smiled, nor did his face show any joy or cheer. The Prophet was also shown paradise and hell. He saw those who wrongfully consume the wealth of orphans. Their lips were like those of camels, and they were stuffing fiery stones into their mouths which came out from their bodies. He saw the usurers whose bellies were so swollen that they could not move from their places, and when the people of Pharaoh were brought before the fire, they would trample over them. He saw the adulterers, before whom was placed fresh and good meat, and beside it rotten and decayed meat. They left the fresh meat and ate the rotten. He saw the women who attributed illegitimate children to their husbands. They were hanging between the heavens and the earth with great crooked hooks piercing their chests. On his way back, the Prophet saw a caravan of the people of Mecca, and informed them about one of their camels that had strayed and run away. He also drank from their water that was covered in a vessel while they were asleep, and then he covered it again. This became one of the signs confirming the truth of his journey on the morning after the Mi'raj. Bin Qayyim said that when in the morning the Prophet narrated this event in the Haram, the disbelievers denied it and said that the journey from Mecca to Jerusalem takes 1 month and the return takes 1 month, So how could this journey be completed in a single night and also include going to the heavens? They asked the Prophet to describe the condition of Jerusalem. At that moment, God made Jerusalem appear before him, and it was placed in front of his sight. The Prophet then began describing its details to the people, and they could not deny what he said. The Prophet also mentioned meeting their caravan on the way, and described the time of its arrival. He pointed out the camel that was leading the caravan. Everything he said turned out exactly as he had described, but despite this their hatred only increased, and in their disbelief they refused to accept anything. When Abu Bakr heard this, he said that if the Prophet had said it, then it is certainly true, and he affirmed it. On this occasion, the Prophet gave Abu Bakr the title of Siddiq. After the Treaty of Hudaybiyah in the 7th year, the Prophet sent a letter through Dihya Kalbi to Heraclius, the Emperor of Rome, inviting him to Islam. Heraclius ordered his people to find if any trader from Hijaz was present. At that time, with a caravan of traders, Abu Sufyan, who had not yet accepted Islam, was present. Heraclius questioned him about the Prophet. While answering, Abu Sufyan recalled the event of the Mi'raj and mentioned that the Prophet had traveled in a single night from the sacred mosque to Al-Aqsa Mosque, then ascended to the heavens and returned. The purpose was most likely to cast doubt in the mind of Heraclius, and to portray the Prophet as, God forbid, a liar. By coincidence, at that time the chief priest of Al-Aqsa Mosque was present in the court of Heraclius. He testified that every night before sleeping he locked all the doors of Al-Aqsa Mosque, but that night no matter how much he tried, the main door would not close. Finally, he called the carpenters to repair it, but despite their efforts they failed. They left the door open and went home. In the morning, when the priest came, he found the door perfectly fine. He also saw a mark on a rock near the mosque, showing a trace as if an animal had been tied there. The priest said that the door remaining open at night was only for that prophet whose coming Jesus had foretold. And surely he must have prayed in the Al-Aqsa Mosque that night. When all the people had pledged allegiance and its conditions had been settled, 12 leaders were appointed according to the command of the Prophet. 9 of them were from the tribe of Khazraj and 3 were from the tribe of Aws. These 12 leaders were made chiefs over their respective tribes for calling people to faith and spreading the message, and they were made responsible for their tribes in carrying out the terms of the pledge. The Prophet said, "You are responsible for the matters of your people just as the disciples of Jesus were responsible for their people, and I am responsible for my people," meaning the Muslims. When the pledge had been completed and the people were about to disperse, a devil discovered it. Because it was the very last moment and there was no time to secretly inform the Quraysh so that they could suddenly attack the gathering, the devil stood on a high place and shouted loudly, "O people of the camps, look at Muhammad, the irreligious ones are with him and they are gathering against you to fight." The Prophet said, "This is the devil of the valley. O enemy of God, listen, soon I will be free for you." Then he told the people to return to their camps. On hearing the devil's voice, Abbas bin Nadla said, "By him who has sent you with the truth, if you command us, we will attack the people of Mina tomorrow with our swords." The Prophet replied, "We have not been commanded to do that. Just return to your camps." Then the people went back and slept until morning. When the Quraysh heard the news, they were deeply distressed because they realized the serious consequences such a pledge could have on their lives and wealth. In the morning, a large delegation of their chiefs went to the camps of the people of Yathrib to protest. They said, "O people of Khazraj, we have been informed that you have come here to take away this man from among us and have pledged allegiance at his hand to fight us. There is no tribe whose enmity would be more difficult for us to bear than yours." But the idolaters of Khazraj knew nothing about the pledge, as it had been carried out in complete secrecy during the night. Therefore, they swore oaths by God that nothing of this sort had happened and that they had no knowledge of it. Finally, the delegation went to Abdullah bin Ubay bin Sulul. He also said, "This is false. Such a thing has not happened. It is impossible that my people would do such a thing without me. Even if I had been in Yathrib, my people would not have done it without consulting me." As for the Muslims, they looked at one another silently and said nothing at all. The chiefs of Quraysh thus believed the denials of the idolaters and returned disappointed. They were almost certain that the news was false, but they continued investigating until they became certain that the pledge had indeed taken place. By that time, however, the pilgrims had already departed for their homelands. The riders of Quraysh pursued the people of Yathrib, but the chance was gone. They managed only to catch Sa'd bin Ubadah and Munzir bin Amr. Munzir was swift and escaped, but Sa'd was captured. They tied his hands behind his neck with the rope of his camel's saddle and beat him, pulling his hair, and dragged him to Mecca. But Mutim bin Adi and Harith bin Harb bin Umayyah freed him, because their caravans used to pass through the protection of Sa'd on the way to Medina. Meanwhile, the Ansar were discussing attacking to rescue him, but soon Sa'd himself appeared, and after that all the people returned safely to Medina. This was the second pledge of Akbar, which is called the Great Pledge of Akbar. It took place in an atmosphere of love and loyalty, unity and cooperation among the scattered believers, mutual trust, sacrifice, and courage. The believers of Yathrib were filled with compassion for their weak brothers of Mecca. They were eager to support them and were angry against those who oppressed them. Their hearts were overflowing with love for their brother, whom they had accepted without ever having seen him, solely for the sake of God. These feelings were not the result of some temporary attraction that fades with time, but were rooted in faith in God, faith in the Messenger, and faith in the Book. This faith does not bow before the greatest forces of tyranny and oppression. When the breeze of this faith blows, it produces wonders in belief and action. It was through this faith that the Muslims inscribed glorious achievements in the pages of history, leaving behind marks and signs the like of which neither the past nor the present has ever seen, and probably the future will not see either. When the second pledge of Akbar was completed and Islam succeeded in laying the foundation of its homeland in the vast desert of disbelief and ignorance, which was the greatest success achieved since the beginning of its mission, the Messenger of God gave permission to the Muslims to migrate to their new land. Migration meant giving up all interests, sacrificing wealth, and saving one's life only with the awareness that even this life was still in danger. At any stage of the journey, they could be killed. The journey was toward an uncertain future, and no one knew what hardships and sorrows awaited them ahead. Despite knowing all this, the Muslims began to migrate. The idolaters also began creating obstacles in their departure, because they understood the dangers it carried. The first migrant was Abu Salmah. According to reports, he had migrated a year before the pledge of Akbar. His wife and child were also with him. When he was about to leave, the family of his wife said, "Your life is your own. You may go, but how can we allow you to take away our daughter so that you carry her from place to place?" So they seized his wife from him. At this, the family of Abu Salmah became angry and said, "If you have taken away our man's wife, then we will not allow his son to remain with her." So they took the child back, leaving Abu Salmah to travel alone to Medina. After this, Salmah was left without her husband and her child. Every morning she would go to Abtar where the separation had taken place, and would cry there until evening. She remained in this condition for a year. Finally, one of her relatives felt pity for her and said, "Why do you not let this poor woman go? She has been forcibly kept away from her husband and her child." Then her family allowed her to leave. She took her son back from her husband's relatives and set out for Medina. The distance was nearly 500 kilometers, and she had no companion. When she reached Tanim, she met Uthman bin Abi Talha, who learned her situation and accompanied her on the journey until they reached Medina. When the settlement of Quba came into view, he said, "Your husband is there. Go to him. May God bless you." Then he returned to Mecca. After her came Amir bin Rabi'ah and his wife Layla bint Abi Hashma, who are mentioned as the first among the migrants. Then came Amr bin Yasir, Bilal bin Rabah, and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. Uthman bin Affan also left secretly with his wife Ruqayyah, the daughter of the Prophet. After that, migration became a continuous movement. When Suhaib intended to migrate, the Quraysh said to him, "When you came to us, you were poor and insignificant, but now you have gained wealth and status here. Do you want to leave with both your life and your wealth? By God, that cannot happen. Suhaib replied, If I leave all my wealth to you, will you then let me go? They said, Yes. So he said, Then take my wealth. When the Prophet learned of this, he said, Suhaib has profited, Suhaib has profited. Abdullah bin Suhail bin Amr was in Abyssinia. When he heard that the Muslims had migrated to Medina, he returned to Mecca. His father seized him, imprisoned him, and began to torture him. At last, in order to escape, he convinced his father that he had returned to the religion of his ancestors, and thus he was released. Later, at the Battle of Badr, when the two armies faced each other, he seized the opportunity to join the Muslims. His father Suhail embraced Islam on the day of the conquest of Mecca.